Hi guys, it's Miss Daniels here. I hope that you're all okay, and I just want to say that we are missing you so much at school and we can't wait to welcome you back. Now today, I will be reading you a little story, and I will be doing this every week. And our story is going to be from this book here, and it is called First Fairy Tales. Okay. Now, I have got a little friend with me, Bear, and he's going to come with me every week to listen to our beautiful story together. Okay, so he's just going to sit there and listen with us. If you've got a little bear that you would like to listen to the story every week with you, then you can do. You can bring one with you. That would be very, very nice. Okay, so this is our book, and the story I'm going to read today is Hansel and Gretel. Now, some of you might have heard this story before. So, the story of Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, a boy and girl called Hansel and Gretel lived with their father and stepmother in a little house beside a big forest. The family was very poor. There was never enough to eat, and they were always hungry. One night when the children were in bed, their stepmother said to their father, "We must take Hansel and Gretel into the forest and leave them there because we can't feed them anymore." "Oh no, I won't do that," said their father. "I love my children." "But we must," said their stepmother. "We have no money and there's not enough food in the house to feed us all." Now Hansel and Gretel were so hungry they couldn't sleep, and they heard what their stepmother said. Gretel began to cry, but Hansel whispered, "Don't cry, little sister. I'll look after you." And he rolled out of bed, put on his jacket, crept into the garden, and filled his pockets with some white pebbles that were shining all silvery in the moonlight. In the morning, the children's stepmother gave them a piece of dry bread to eat and told them to hurry, because the whole family was going into the forest to collect firewood. Then off they went together, but Hansel walked behind the others, and every now and then he dropped a white pebble on the path. After a while they came to a clearing in the forest. Then the children's stepmother said, "Wait here while we go a little further and chop down some trees." So Hansel and Gretel sat down, but they were tired and they soon fell asleep. And when they woke, it was night and the moon was in the sky. Hansel looked around and he found his pebbles shining all silvery in the moonlight. So he took Gretel by the hand and they followed the trail of pebbles. It led them back to their own little house. Their father was very happy when he saw them, but their stepmother was not. The next night she said to their father, "We must take Hansel and Gretel into the forest again, and this time we must make sure they don't come back." Once again, the children were awake, and when they heard what was said, Hansel crept off to collect some more pebbles. But the door was locked, and the key was gone, so he could not go outside. In the morning, their stepmother gave them a piece of dry bread to eat, but Hansel put it in his pocket. Then the family went off into the forest to collect more firewood, but Hansel walked behind the others, and every now and then he dropped a small white breadcrumb on the path. When they had gone a long way into the forest, their stepmother said to the children, "Wait here while we go and chop down some trees." Once again, Hansel and Gretel sat down and fell asleep. When they woke, it was night and the moon was in the sky. Hansel looked around, but he could not see the breadcrumbs he had dropped. The birds of the forest had flown down and eaten every single one. Now Hansel did not know which way to go, but he took Gretel by the hand and they walked and walked. All through the night they walked. Morning came and they walked on. At last they came to a clearing in the forest, and there was a house, a strange and wonderful house. It had gingerbread walls, barley sugar windows and a chocolate door, while the roof was made of cakes and cookies, decorated with twists and twirls of icing. Hansel snapped off a lump of icing and bit into it. Gretel broke off a piece of gingerbread and popped it in her mouth. Here's the house. And then, all of a sudden, the door opened and an old woman with ruby red eyes came out. She said, "Who's that nibbling at my house?" "I'm sorry," said Hansel, "but we're very hungry." "Then come in," said the old woman, "and I shall give you some supper." So Hansel and Gretel went into the house, and the old woman gave them each a glass of milk, some pancakes, and an apple. When they had eaten the food, she took them into a room where there were 2 little beds. And it was not long before Hansel and Gretel were curled up in those beds, fast asleep. They did not know that the old woman was a witch who caught children who were lost in the forest and ate them. In the morning, the witch crept in, bent down over the sleeping children and looked at them very closely. She had to do that because she could not see clearly with her ruby red eyes. "They are too thin to eat," she said, "much too thin." She shook Hansel and woke him, and she took him and put him into a cage. She shook Gretel and shouted, "Get up, lazy bones, light the fire, wash the dishes, scrub the floor, and be quick about it." From that time on, Gretel had to work very hard, but Hansel was kept in the cage. The witch gave him lots of food to make him fat, and every day she said to him, "Show me your finger so I can see how fat you are." Now Hansel had found a small chicken bone in the cage, and guess what he did? He pushed out the bone instead of his finger. When the witch felt the bone, she always said, "Still too thin, much too thin." But after a while, the witch grew tired of waiting for Hansel to grow fat. And one morning she said to Gretel, "Light the fire and heat the oven, because today, fat or thin, I am going to roast your brother and eat him." So Gretel lit the fire. When the oven was very hot, the witch said, "Climb into the oven and see if it is hot enough." But Gretel was a sensible girl, and she was not going to climb into a hot oven. She said, "You must show me how to do it." "Well, open the door like this," said the witch. She opened the door. "You put your head in like this," and she leant forward. Then Gretel gave her a hard push, and the witch went head over heels into the oven. Gretel slammed the door shut, and that was the end of the wicked witch. Gretel ran to the cage. She unlocked it, and Hansel was free. Then they opened the witch's treasure chest and filled their pockets with gold and silver and precious jewels. There they are, with all the gold and all the jewels. "Now we must go home," said Hansel. So off they went. They walked and walked and walked, and at last they came to a path, which they knew. They walked faster, and then they saw their own little house, and they ran. Their father was very happy to see his children. He had missed them and spent every day looking for them in the forest. This had made their stepmother angry, and one day she had packed her clothes and left, and she did not come back. From that time on, Hansel and Gretel and their father lived happily in their little house beside the big forest. Because of the witch's treasure, they had enough money to buy all the food they needed. So Hansel and Gretel never again went to bed feeling hungry. The end. So that's the end of Hansel and Gretel. Did you like it? I hope you did. Now next week I will be reading you another story from this book. And Little Bear was here to listen to our story. And he will be back, and I will be back next week. See you soon.